And good morning to you. It is 9:46. Brad Overdorff is with us this morning, candidate for Indiana County Sheriff. Good morning.
Morning, Tony.
It's good to have you with us here today.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we're glad that you're here because we've been sort of parading candidates for all kinds of district or Indiana County offices into the studios here this morning. So let's visit with you a little bit and talk about your candidacy for Indiana County Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what went into the decision to run.
Basically, my background, Tony, is in law enforcement, 21 plus years with the Pennsylvania State Police. I did retire I retired from law enforcement to work the farm that my wife and I bought, and that was my goal, to become a full-time farmer. Mm-hmm. The more I read in the newspaper, the more I hear on the news, and I see the things that are going on today, it just kept pulling at me. I sat down, spoke with my wife and kids about coming back to law enforcement, and we all agreed, and my wife and children said, this is something we need to do. And basically, I guess I could say, I'm back. I want to make that difference.
What made you get into law enforcement in the very beginning?
My background comes from the Marine Corps. The day after I turned 18 years old, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. I was there for 7 years. Came back from the Marine Corps. The first place I went, I don't know if you could say it's a calling. It was just the first place I went when I got out of the Marine Corps was the Pennsylvania State Police to try to get hired there.
Mm-hmm. And so there you were, and that is a very rigorous process. Then that's not an easy academy to graduate from, and then you have the long career as a state police trooper.
Yes, sir. It takes about a year to get hired by the state police. I began in January of '93. I began the hiring process, and through the testing and all the interviews and tests that you take, it takes about a year. Mm-hmm. And in early January of 1994, I reported to the academy.
There is a difference, obviously, between being a state police trooper and an Indiana County Sheriff. Nonetheless, you work with the state police as a sheriff and with borough police departments, with county government as a whole, and specifically with the courts in Indiana County. Tell me what your conception is of the role of Indiana County Sheriff.
Well, the Indiana County Sheriff's duties and responsibility, they do vary vastly from that of a Pennsylvania State Trooper, and I'm well aware of that and ready to assume that role and step into the sheriff's office. In my opinion, the sheriff's office needs to lead a lot of the things, whether it be organizing these things, putting together. All the years I worked here in Indiana, I worked midnight shift for almost 13 years with the state police here in Indiana. We cultivated a working relationship with all the local departments. I worked very well with them. I still maintain that relationship to this day with all the local departments in the area.
What are some of the duties that the Indiana County Sheriff has to perform?
Well, the duties are the courtroom securities, your children and youth securities, your domestic relations, your magistrate's office, warrant service. They do the property liens, the sales, the sheriff sales, and things of that nature is their main duties. But they also go out and be seen. They serve warrants. There's you get out into the public. I understand those duties, but it's my wish to also get more involved in the current crisis we're seeing in the area as far as the opioid crisis and other things like that.
Mm-hmm. How would you do that in your role as sheriff? Well,
first and foremost, we would sit down at the proverbial round table. I would contact the state police, ask Lieutenant Joe Loughran to come, Indiana Borough, Justin Shaw, IUP, get Kevin, Tony Jellison from Homer City, Chief Blake and Cherry Tree, Chief Douglas. Get them all at a table, sit down, and work towards that common goal of not one more victim. Mm-hmm. It is better to work as a team, Tony, than it is to work as individuals.
As Indiana County Sheriff, one of the things you mentioned a couple of moments ago was warrant service. That can be a very dangerous work. It's not something you take lightly, is it?
That is correct. I was very, very proactive in officer safety. 2 weeks ago, the last time I looked at the warrant list, there was 415 people on the outstanding bench warrant list in Indiana County. Those are some issues that need addressed. You can foster so many things from serving those warrants and being out in the public and taking care of that duty. It will just lead in different directions.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get out of the car or the SUV or whatever county vehicle you happen to be in, and you're going up to knock on that door, you don't know what's on the other side of it.
You do not. You do not, Tony. I have been to some rather interesting calls in my 21 plus years as a state trooper. I believe we were shot at maybe twice. Once down in New Florence. The other one would have been up towards Penview. It's one of those things. These young men and women that serve in this job, they've accepted that risk. They're willing to. It's really not in your head. It's in your head to do your job, accomplish your goal, and first and foremost, go home at the end of every shift.
Yeah, you have to be vigilant in with everything that you do. Talk, if you would, about courtroom security, because that was another thing that you mentioned.
The courtroom security is paramount. You can get on YouTube video, Tony, and see the reactions of different people when they get sentenced. Or you take, for instance, down in Uniontown, they had that individual come in based on a PFA issue, and there ended up turning into a tragic accident there. But that is a paramount issue, is to keep those things under control, basically.
Yeah, and the actual delivery of suspects or defendants from the prison, the state prison, or from the Indiana County Jail to the courtroom, that is in the duties of the sheriff as well, is it not?
Yes, sir, it is. And that's another one of those faceted roles that the Sheriff's Department conducts to assist the overall goal of law enforcement. If you, as a trooper, when I needed to haul a prisoner to a hearing, there was 2 of us in a car. That took us off the road for approximately 3 hours. That's 2 troopers, 3 hours off the road. Where if the Sheriff's Department transports those prisoners, those troopers, those local law enforcement officers are back on the road, back out in the public, doing what they do.
We had another candidate for sheriff in a month or so ago, and we were talking with him about the role of the sheriff as defined by the Pennsylvania State Constitution. And that role is defined by the Constitution as to what roles and what duties you can perform, with a very few exceptions, one of those being in Pittsburgh, where the sheriff has different powers. Do you see an expansion of the sheriff's roles as something that would be worth advocating, or are you comfortable with where the sheriff's role is right now?
It would be nice to see those additional powers. I believe it's House Bill 466. It's currently on the table. It's in Harrisburg. It's basically a dead subject at this time. But going forward with that, you have enough to do now. My goal would be to integrate, bring all those departments together. Let's work as one team. Let's work towards a common goal. And then you can worry later about expanding the role of the sheriff. There's another House bill, Tony, that was just brought up in February, I believe, by a representative out of down east, and that is to do away with constables. He wants to do away with elected constables and roll those duties to the sheriff's department as well. So you will have enough to do without worrying about expanding your powers and getting in. But it would be nice to have those if the situation would arise.
Okay. All right. So you've been obviously campaigning and getting out there, meeting people, and I would assume that you have other events and visits to make through the course of the campaign season. How's it been for you so far?
So far, we've received a lot of positive reinforcement or positive support. We're getting out to talk to folks. They are wanting to see a more active, so to speak, sheriff's department. They would like to be seen more. Talking about the drug issues, and somebody needs to step up, in my opinion, Tony, and become a leader or become that person that brings everybody to the round table to work as a team instead of everybody working separately.
People want to learn more about Brad Overdorff running for the Indiana County Sheriff's position. Do you have a website or a Facebook page?
We do have a Facebook page, Tony. At this point, we don't have any a goal towards setting up a web page, but we do have a Facebook page. It's Brad Overdorff for Indiana County Sheriff. We're doing basically everything that we can to. It's this politic thing is all new to me, and we're kind of learning as we go.
Mm-hmm. Well, we wish you the best. Thanks for coming in to visit with us today.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160, 101.1.